Whoso boasts himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaks the bone. Have you found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for you, lest you be filled therewith and vomit it. Withdraw your foot from your neighbor's house, lest he be weary of you, and so hate you. A man that bears false witness against his neighbor is a maul and a sword and a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in a time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. Rastafari. Greetings, giving thanks. Rosh Report's headline of the time. So ISIL's been given these surface-to-air missiles. They've been supplied by Qatar, apparently against the American wishes. And, you know, so now they can target planes, commercial planes, whatever. And, of course, have we denounced Qatar for supplying ISIL? The same one's been cutting people's heads off. Have we denounced any of these countries? No, they're still our allies. Can anybody explain that realistically? Realistically. You know, what can we say, man? What can we say? We put our faith in these leaders. We put our faith in these people. We put our faith in our neighbors around us to vote sensibly. But people don't vote for everyone's interests. People vote for their own interests. They're always thinking about themselves. How's this going to benefit me? How can we live in a culture that thinks about themselves? And you know, as much as we do now, the future is going to be so much worse. You got the smartphone technology, people can't get away from it. It's their God. And the whole time, who's behind it? Who's giving them the information? Who is the messenger on that device? So, you see, we got problems, and we're going to have to start taking things into our own hand. We're going to have to form our own organization, our own party, our own coalition of people, so that we can come up against this and have a chance of survival for the future. Physical survival. Now we know the spiritual survival is promised unto us, but yet the physical survival we look for, because it is our duty, is our call. We can't just lay down and die. You know, Jah gave us, He gave us those treasures. Are we going to go bury it and say, Jah, I didn't want to lose it? No, we have to go multiply. So ISIL was kicked out of Al-Qaeda in May for disobeying the leader, Zawahiri. You know, as I mentioned in the last video, ISIL, you know, they've come to clash with Al-Qaeda because of their gruesomeness. Zawahiri was saying that, you know, they're not operating within the boundaries of what Zawahiri considers to be the Islamic rule. The U.S. Treasury Department said last week that ISIS has earned about $1 million a day from selling oil on the black market, and they say earned about $1 million. I would probably say it's probably more than that, based on all the oil fields they've taken over. And as a matter of fact, this might actually have to do with the reduction of the prices of gas. It may not completely fall into the responsibility of the Saudis. It may actually have to do with the fact that ISIL's taking over these operations. They're going to pump out and sell oil any way they can. Whoever is behind ISIS is benefiting from those sales. And of course, we don't want to make that a public statement, because then you're going to have people that are going to be shying away from the pump, thinking about the people that are getting their heads cut off, and in this real deal. But we got more about that. Experts tracking terrorist networks say, however, the continued infighting could also incite a competition over who would be the first to launch a new attack against the West. So this is like a new Cold War now. They're going to say, oh, you know, we should let them join, because if they don't join, then they're going to compete about who's going to attack the West first. I mean, this is so absurd. So absurd. Tens of fighters left Nusra over the past days. So al-Nusra fighters are now leaving, and they say that they're joining them because of the attacks by the West, by the Western forces. They say that now al-Nusra is leaving the fight with ISIL so that they can, you know, basically expand their capabilities and counter the what they consider to be the insurgency. Al-Qaeda is also worried about ISIL's success in recruiting young jihadis. So much that a pro-Al-Qaeda cleric from Saudi Arabia went online last week to chasten militant commanders, including ones affiliated with Al-Qaeda, for not doing more to stem the tides of recruits headings to ISIL. So, does that make any sense? So Al-Qaeda is worried about ISIS recruiting young fighters. I mean, that's something you have to really think about for a minute. Mohammed Mahusini denounced ISIL for killing Muslims. So apparently they're tying this in, saying, well, he doesn't want the young fighters to go in because ISIL's not operating within those boundaries. But, you know, I would question that. Islamic Empire without consultation among all Muslims. Senator Angus King from the U.S. Maine sits on the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, said it was likely if the two groups cooperate, likely that the two groups do cooperate, at least tactically. So, you know, in other words, they're cooperating tactically. Well, are they fighting against Assad, or is he talking about fighting against the U.S. West? He added they certainly don't agree with one another. So apparently there's your answer. One of them fighting against Assad, one's fighting against the U.S. West, but they're also cooperating with one another because, of course, they have to inform each other, you know, where the hits are going or whatever. Apparently somebody's cooperating somewhere, and that wasn't part of the game plan. The game plan was to topple Assad. This thing is dragged on. It's getting more and more attention as it goes. Of course, it's not getting attention from Google News. It's not getting attention from the slave stream news. You're still going to see the same. Every week there's another story. Somebody pops up, some plane hits something or whatever. But they're trying to draw attention away from Syria because it's such an embarrassment. It didn't work out. Then you got the British freelance journalist John Cannelly. Apparently he's making new news productions where he's acting like he's on the side of ISIS, that he's not a prisoner, he's not in a orange jumpsuit, he's in black, and he's speaking about the war around him, but it's tainted, you know, it's got a bit of propaganda to it, a propaganda twist on the side of ISIL, which, another thing that I would be very skeptical about. They say his mustache has been shaved in line with the fashion adopted by Salafi or purist Muslims. Apparently they shaved their mustache. And airstrikes has turned the battle into a street-by-street example of urban warfare, which is something of a specialty of the Mujahideen. So here's an article that talks about the cartels versus ISIL, and it basically points to the cartels as being just as much of a threat, if not more of a threat, than ISIL. And it's got some good statistics in here. Not good, but it brings some facts. Drug cartels, and this is from the Mexican government, by the way. Drug cartels murdered more than 16,000 people in Mexico during 2013 alone, and another 60,000 from 2006 to 2012. A rate of more than one killing every half an hour for the last 7 years. With the apparent assistance of local police, they recently kidnapped 43 students, and there was found to be a mass grave, I guess, where they were all burnt. From 2006 to 2010, as many as 57 Americans were killed in the U.S. by cartel-fueled drug violence. So now they're talking about the deaths that occurred in the U.S. And by contrast, 2,937 people were killed in the September 11, 2001 attacks. Over the last decade, some 2,349 Americans were killed in Afghanistan, while 4,487 Americans died during the Iraq War. In 4 years, the cartels have managed to cause the deaths of more Americans than 911 or the entire tours of Afghanistan and Iraq. The Lebanese resistance movement, Hezbollah, is called on Saudi Arabia to stop the spread of Takfiri ideology in the Middle East. This is the ideology is rooted in Wahhabism, and it's, you know, it was spread later on. It's actually, it says right here, the Takfiri thought was established in the Arab world almost 200 years ago. So it's fairly new, and it was spread through the government, through universities, schools, newspapers, and houses of publication in order to pervade its concepts all over the world.